Welcome to Kitchen Conversations. Today my guest is Dr. Barbara Orr. I'm so pleased to have you. Thank you for joining us here. We're going to be talking about a really important topic, the epidemic of obesity. Dr. Orr, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get interested in this? What's your background?
Well, having been in medicine for 40 years, I began to see about 10, 20 years ago, patients started getting bigger and bigger. And I wasn't sure why. And then, of course, it started to come out in the literature. And it was interesting, there was a researcher who began to see the same phenomena as they gathered data about the size of our population. This was in the 80s, and she saw that there was a jump in obesity and was trying to understand it. And they saw that young girls, 20-year-olds to 29-year-olds, and they studied this in 1960. The average weight was 127, okay. And then as they studied it even further, in 2000, the average weight was 157. This was the average weight.
That's incredible. That's 30 pounds. Yeah. Wow.
And so people were trying to understand it. And I was trying to understand it from the perspective of my patients, and I realized that it was becoming an epidemic. We had diabetes, even in our young children, type 2 diabetes, which we never saw before. No. I saw all these different issues that were taking place. So I began to study it myself. And I also wanted to, as the director of student education for family medicine, I wanted to develop a lecture or presentation on obesity. So I began to study. My husband, for Christmas, gave me the book, The Hungry Gene. So I developed a presentation on it, and I continued to study it. And I've continued to have an interest in it and try to understand it from all these different perspectives, from the food industry to the sociological issues, the stresses that patients are going under. How can I help them better? And that was and to teach young people, hey, this is an epidemic you're going to have to help solve. And so that's how I got interested.
And I know literature now, you find out everywhere where you're reading, the newspapers, everything, saying we are just getting bigger.
And it's not getting better.
No.
Yeah, and I then went back and said, what started it?
Because when you're heavy and your weight is too much, lots of things happen. But I don't even want to ask this, but am I obese? How do we determine what obesity is?
Well, there's several ways we can do that. We can do it by what we call the body mass index, which is a ratio. And just knowing the numbers, I won't go into how we figure it out, but it's a ratio of our height and our weight.
So how tall you are versus
and how much you weigh in kilograms and centimeters. But if your body mass index is over 25, you're overweight. Okay. And if it's over 30, you're obese. And if you're in the 40s, then you're profoundly obese. But another simple way that everybody can figure out is just measure from your belly button around your waist.
Okay, so you get your old tape measure out.
Your own tape measure, and if you're over 35, you're obese. For a woman.
If it's more than 35 inches around the middle of my tummy,
you're overweight. You're obese. You're obese. Oh. And for men, it's 40. So that's a real simple way.
So if your husband asks you to go to town and get him some new pants and he needs a size
40
you're going to go, honey, no more dessert for you.
Well, I have to let him make up that decision. Okay, what I want to kind of is help you understand and help the audience understand what happened in our society.
Yeah, what changed really that we'd get bigger?
You know, and I've been studying this for a while, but there was a couple things, maybe 4 or 5 major issues that took place. One was after World War II, and if you look at documentary, I tend to be a history buff, and I look at the documentaries, and hear these servicemen coming back from World War II. There's no obesity.
No, they're all
in the crowd. Everybody's
lean and muscular.
And well, in the whole population.
Right.
When they were celebrating the men arriving in New York with all the confetti, you look, there's no fat people there. And so all this change has taken place in the last 65 years. After in World War, 1945, at the end of World War II.
People were lean.
Yeah, so what happened? Well, we knew that some things during the war, you know, we didn't have butter and sugar and those things, but something happened in the last 65 years that have made our population fat and overweight.
So it isn't just that we've gotten, well, we've moved off the farm.
Yeah.
And
we're not
people
moving.
used to work really hard. I mean, when you think of Rosie the Riveter and all the women who went to work, because that was a phenomenon.
And that's part of it.
That people maybe work different, but what else has happened?
Well, we know that people started to go out to eat. So after World War II, people went out to restaurants. Not like they do now, but they started to. And then our food industry changed. And what started to change is, and President Nixon started to subsidize some of our farmers. And there was an overabundance of corn. So they said, what are we going to do with all this corn? So they fed it to cattle, pigs, chickens, and our fish.
How do you feed corn to fish? Oh, I won't ask that question.
You know, grain, you know.
Yeah, right.
So they made, and cattle weren't used to eating corn. They ate grass and grain and other wheat and some other foods. And so this fattened them up. And we were able to fatten, it used to take 4 to 5 years to fatten up a steer or a cattle. Now we can do it in 14 to 16 months.
Right, really fast.
By feeding them. So they got fatter, and we got fatter.
We called them corn-fed. You buy corn-fed beef. I remember that being a selling thing.
And yet their stomachs don't handle it very well. And what happens is about 30% will get liver abscesses.
Of the animals?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because they're not used to eating corn. So what do we have to do? Give them antibiotics. So when we say organic or we say pasture-fed, that's a better kind of meat if you're going to choose. But we won't go too much into that. But that was when we started feeding corn. We got our animals that we were eating fatter, and we got fatter. So that's, and then corn, we made corn into everything. We had high fructose corn syrup.
Corn syrup, and that's in many of our drinks.
It's in our ketchup. It's in our all other kinds of condiments. It's in all our processed foods.
So we quit using the cane sugar and the beet sugar and supplemented it with a
high fructose corn syrup.
Which is
so that was another thing.
A natural thing.
And what our food industry, they wanted to sell more food, so we added more fat, sugar, and salt to our other foods.
So now we start getting used to the taste.
Yes, and we become addicted to those. You know, I love fat, sugar, and salt.
I do too, man.
Probably more so salt, and each of us are different. I tend to be more of a salt eater than I am a sugar eater. So this added to our obesity, and we became addicted to these foods. And then, of course, we started getting fast food. McDonald's came in the 60s, and fast foods and all.
And then we started supersizing and everything else, and that just compounds.
Yeah, and so we get used to it, and we get used to eating a certain way, and and it's hard to break those habits. And supersizing our kids, if you go, and I go down to see my grandkids, and I stop to get a soda.
Something to drink.
Yeah, try to say, okay, a diet soda, and you can't get less than 22 ounces.
So we're drinking our calories.
Absolutely. And we have kids that come up from Mexico who in 6 months can become obese just on sodas.
6 months.
So
that's profound.
And we oftentimes we eat fruit, drink fruit juices and take sodas. That's just one of many reasons why. The other reason is kids nowadays, and even in 1 year, they went in front of monitor. They're in some form of a monitor, whether it's a computer monitor, they're texting, they are watching TV, and the average child now is watching 8 hours, or in front of a monitor, and it could be texting 8 hours a day.
Oh my goodness, when do they have time to? Well, if they do that for 8 hours, and then they sleep for 8 hours, and then they go to school.
Yeah.
That means they're not moving.
Yeah, they're texting or they're doing something, but they're not out exercising. They're not out moving.
So if we quit moving, do you think in the United States, if we lessened how much we're moving?
A lot of people, you know, you drive in your car. You used to ride. Now, you know, it'd be nice to ride our bike or go do more walking than we do, like they do in Europe. Or, you know, we know that in New York they do more walking than we do in other.
My husband and we went with some friends to Jamaica. I couldn't get over the Jamaican people. First of all, they're very erect and flat-backed, and I didn't see one large person. But they walked everywhere they went. There was very few automobiles, and I think they carried the rest of us chubby tourists around. So what are some of the problems that you see coming in your clinic because of being obese? I mean, if I just choose to be overweight, isn't that just my choice? So what else happens?
A lot of these things I'm going to tell you about, but I want to tell you about things that the overweight, obese person doesn't realize. I mean, we know we have high blood pressure and stroke and diabetes is going to double.
It's going to
double by 2050 if we don't do anything.
Horrible disease. I mean, it's
and even our children. I mean, it's sad that we have 10-year-olds that are type 2 diabetes because of their weight problem. But besides these, everyone knows these issues, there are increased cancers.
Okay.
And we get breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, and uterine cancer. And we're seeing 35-year-olds that are having uterine cancer we didn't see 20, 30 years ago because of their obesity. Why? Because the fat around our belly is making harmful substances, and one is tumor necrosis factor. This factor is a marker for cancer. And then we have other factors, I won't mention all of them, but this adds to our cancer.
Wow.
So as we put more weight, particularly around our belly, is going to add to our increase in cancer. But this is the issue that a lot of overweight, obese people don't realize. And I remember in 1970, I graduated from medical school, and the ultrasound came out. So we could diagnose gallbladder disease, and gallbladder disease is more common in overweight people. But somebody would get abdominal pain, and if it's in the right upper quadrant, we think of gallbladder disease. And I would remember seeing, and then in the last 10, 15 years, I said, wow, we're getting a lot of fatty livers.
Oh yeah, I've heard that word. What does that mean?
Okay. Fatty liver, as we gain weight, we're putting fat all over.
Right.
But it goes into our liver. And fatty liver now supersedes, that means
there's more
of it than alcohol causing cirrhosis.
Oh my.
And cirrhosis is when you damage your liver so bad
it doesn't
it doesn't function anymore.
And livers are very important because they're kind of one of our cleaners.
Well,
They're
the other
filters.
issue, if you need a new liver, there's only about 4,000 available nationwide for a liver transplant. So even if your liver failed, you're probably going to die from this. And people, and as people eat, they don't realize you're damaging your liver. Now, for those out there who go to their family physician or their internist and they get blood work, which you get, particularly if you have diabetes, and you're seeing your liver enzymes, and these are substances made by if it's going up, and your doctor says, you know, your liver enzymes are up a little bit, what should you do about that? And this is one thing I want to educate the public. If your doctor says, you know, your liver enzymes, are you drinking? You say, no, I don't drink. And then what your doctor should be doing is checking you for hepatitis B and C, and also get an iron level, because iron can store in your liver and look the same way. And then if you have elevation of your liver enzymes, you probably should get an ultrasound to make sure, to see if you do have a fatty liver, because about 10 to 15%, and some GI doctors say it can be up to 20%, will go on to cirrhosis.
So if somebody told me I had a fatty liver, then
you better go to your doctor and say, can you check me for hepatitis, get an iron level, and get an ultrasound.
Okay.
Now write that down, because it's so common and we don't think about it, and doctors are being more educated to the real profound effect of fat and its effect on the liver.
So now, if I add everything up, I'm probably a little bit obese. And you became interested in this because you've seen this increase in your patients coming in and talking to you. What are some things that we can do about this?
What I've learned over the years, I used to say, now, we got to talk about your weight. I like to ask the patient, would you like to talk about it? Because maybe they have so many other issues. And I have a daughter that's a family physician. She called me up one day and said, Mom, I am so mad at my overweight patients. And I said, look, Kelly, you have no idea the stresses people are under. Maybe there was abuse. Maybe there was, they're losing their house. Maybe they are, have to go in, have to live with relatives because their mortgage, they can't make mortgage payments and there's foreclosure on their house. So as a family physician, I'm trying to understand what stressors are my patients going, and for me to dump something else on their head to try to solve their overweight and obese problem. And I need to support them in these other stress issues that they're struggling with. So I like to ask, is there some, would you like to talk about it? Because I've learned over the years, and I try to teach medical students, collaborate with your patients. You have to help them struggle with the issues in their life that I have no concept of. I'm not struggling with it. And I want to help them deal with these issues and live life a little more effectively. So what we teach medical students is what we call motivational interviewing. How do we motivate our patient? And there's another way of helping patients. I call it giving them an action plan. And I said, would you like to talk about this today? And in the action plan, we have like maybe 6 issues we want to help a patient with. One may be quitting smoking. It may be putting more fruits and vegetables in their diet, or it may be adding more exercise. So we ask them, what would you like to work on today? Let's work on adding more exercise. So then we have a scale at the bottom of this action plan. How likely are you to do this? Now, if 1 to 10.
Right.
Now, if they're a 7, the chances are, they're probably likely going to do it. So then what we have our students do is call them in about a week and say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, little accountability helps.
See if they can get an idea. Let the student get an idea if your patients, and then many times they find they are. And they want, particularly if they like you and they want to please you, they'll do it. So
sometimes it's a little step. I noticed you brought several books here.
Yeah.
What are the books for?
Okay, when I talk to a patient about a program to help them with their weight, I tell them different. What we know works in the past from the National Dietary Registry. And I ask them if they're eating breakfast or not. And 90% of overweight people don't eat breakfast. So I'll tell them, oh, I don't feel like eating breakfast. So I try to let them know the importance. And the most important aspect of eating breakfast, it charges up our metabolism.
Well, that'd be good because that's the burning.
And that's right. You want to burn the calories, and it's been shown that if an occasional person can be thin and don't eat breakfast, but majority of individuals have to charge up their metabolism, their burning of calories by eating breakfast.
Okay.
And if they're not used to eating breakfast, I'll give them some ideas. How about an apple, string cheese? Find something they like, and you want protein. And you want complex carbohydrate, like an apple. You don't want a bagel, unless it's a whole wheat bagel and a small whole wheat bagel.
The little ones. Bagels usually.
So how do you know if it's whole wheat? Do you have any idea? How do you know if it's a good whole wheat?
If I can see the seeds inside?
You look at fiber.
Oh, the fiber content.
Yeah, it should be 3 grams of fiber.
Okay.
So we want, and then we know we have enough fiber, because a lot of times there'll be whole, and I see this 8 grains of this and that, and it has 1 or 2 grains of fiber, and there's not enough fiber. And why do you want fiber? Because it slows down your absorption of sugar. It also fills you up. So that's the beauty of fiber. So you feel like you ate something, and, and you're not going to be hungry right away. So we try to design some form of a diet that they like, and then I tell them, they need to eat every 3 hours so they don't get hungry. You do not want, what happens a lot of times if you don't eat breakfast, you ate maybe 6 or 7 at night, and then your next meal is 12, 1 o'clock, and you're ravenous.
Yeah.
So the person tends to overeat. Oh, that's why it's important that we don't skip meals and we eat breakfast. And
so we're going to eat breakfast. We're going to eat frequently.
Frequently, so you don't ever get hungry.
Okay.
And find foods that are filling. It can be turkey or some protein. If you're veggie, it can be some veggie meat. It can be string cheese. Although if you're a vegan, then you have to beans or some other form of protein. So you try to help them understand foods that are appetite suppressants, and anything with fiber like apples, oranges, pears, all kinds of fruit. Some have more fiber than others, and you can you can Google it and see which ones are the high fiber foods, and then have them be aware that they should not drink their calories.
I know, that's just such a great thought that I really haven't thought about before.
My husband would always get orange juice. I said, "Do you know how many calories that is?" And he'd take a large glass. I said, 6 ounces is 90 calories.
So there's almost 100 calories, and that,
you know, 100 calories every day that you don't need is 10 pounds in a year.
Wow.
So people don't realize it sneaks up on you.
So a little bit, even those little 100 calorie little snacks that people like to go, well, this is just 100
it's
calories.
okay if you take like these bagels that are whole grain and that was your snack.
That was your snack.
You want about 100. What kind of a design for what is doable for people? You want 200 to 300 calories in the morning, 400 to 500 at noon, and 500 to 700 at the most. And this is kind of gives you go incrementally up. Although I actually like people to eat their biggest meal at lunch and a little bit lighter at supper, and then because you're not as active at supper. So
you just kind of take it to bed with you.
A couple other pointers: exercise. Of the 3 behaviors, eating breakfast, making sure that you are active, and make sure that you keep a food diary is very important too.
Oh, food diary. Actually write down what you put in your mouth. I think you're right.
But you know, you know what I've learned? Some people hate to do stuff like that. So I said, we have to work out what's doable for you. Same way with weighing yourself. So the 3 biggest behaviors: eat breakfast, weigh yourself regularly, and then find some form of exercise that you like.
We were talking about that before the show started today, and you were sharing with me some things, and maybe we have just a little bit of time here to do that. If I have to go to the gym, it might not happen, because till I get to work, and then you go home. So what are some things simple
I'm going to show
I
you
can do?
one simple exercise. Now, for women, I want them to have 3-pound dumbbells, 3 pounds here and 3 pounds here. And this is a very simple exercise everybody can do, and they can do it while they're watching TV. Now, if you have bad knees, you're going to have to modify. And I try to get patients to think of areas that they may. I have trouble with my neck because I landed on my head skiing one time. And so I have to be careful. If I do exercises, I cannot do exercises that aggravate an injury. So be careful when you do this. So I'm going to show you just real simple and if you're unstable on your legs and you're wobbly, you may want to get up against the wall and not bend down so far. I'm used to this. So I do a biceps curl, come up over my head, turn my hand, and then come down with my weight, and then squat down, and then come back up. And I do as many as I can in a minute. I've gotten up to the point I do about 40 in a minute. And I'm getting aerobic exercises as well as muscle building exercises.
So it's both?
Both.
And you just spend a little time doing this?
You can, I mean, you're only doing a minute, and if you can gradually do up to 3 to 4 repetitions, you do quite well with that. And then I do one like this for a minute.
Down and back behind you.
Elbows up with my 6 pounds, and then I do another this way. Okay?
And then back.
Yeah. And you do 3 sets of those, a minute each. You can do most of your exercise in 15 minutes.
Wow, that's really great. So
it's doable. And you want something that's doable, and I oftentimes will listen to a good book. And I never get bored. No job is too onerous. If I'm weeding in the garden, if I'm raking leaves, nothing's going to bother me because I'm listening to a good book. I find ways to make it fun. You got to make it fun and doable.
So really, I think what we've been talking about today is the fact that obesity is a real problem for the nation. And together we need to get our arms around this, literally, is to help people move more, encourage people to eat breakfast, encourage us to weigh ourselves, measure around our tummies to see where that is, and then really not so much joining a big diet as getting more involved with just changing our lifestyle.
You know, I like to help individuals realize this is a lifelong commitment. And we're addicted to these fatty, sugary, salty, fried foods. And they're hard to break. So if you can figure out a way, one is try to reduce stress. Get rid of your awful mother-in-law or your angry boss or the job that you hate. This will make it easier because you need emotional energy to make these changes. But you can make the changes when it comes to eating breakfast. Don't let yourself get too hungry. But it's the emotional issues that I find are some of the hardest aspects of losing weight. And as I work with people over the years, it's interesting. When I got this one book on flat abs, and I happened to get it at a yard sale, and the lady had at least 5 or 6 books on weight loss. And I said, I took her back into the garage, and I said, can I ask you a personal question? What's the hardest thing about losing weight? Well, she was a social worker. She had 2 young children. And she said, I just don't have the time. So take the time, be kind to yourself. Don't flagellate yourself because it's so hard to do.
So, yeah, be kind to yourself. I think that's really great. Understand that together we all have to move more. We all have to work on things, just change a few things, add a few more vegetables, a few more fruits to your diet. I do this. 5 and 5, 5 fruits.
5 fruits and 5 vegetables.
5 vegetables. Make sure that you're getting some good fiber. Do the 3 things that we talked about. And just start small. But I think with small steps, we can have large things. It's just a few less calories a day can make a lot of difference in your life. So until we meet in the kitchen again, I just want you to stay well, be happy, and enjoy your life. We'll see you soon.